Okay, so I'm gonna do I think it's 7 of my diary, and the rest of it, I want to get through my story. I want to be done with it. This part's gonna be the beginning of the fallout. So CJ told Michelle about the cheating, and at first, CJ was very upset because Michelle stormed out of the house, said she's moving out and stuff. So CJ was very upset, and a few of CJ's friends were around, including myself, because we had spent the night. And so we went to go comfort CJ. And one of his other friends took him out, I guess, for a drive or to go hang out or something, just to get him out of the house. And so I stuck around and hung out with CJ's roommate and best friend, who I'm going to call Tanner. Because I was at a loss for what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously something big was happening, and I didn't know where I was going to fit into all of it. Because CJ didn't tell Michelle that it was me that he was cheating on her with. So I think my emotions were kind of all in a jumble. I was upset about what happened the night before. And I felt like the ugliness of what CJ and I had been doing for the past year and a half was finally kind of starting to dawn on me. So I was starting to feel, terrible, because I felt like I was a lot of what was causing a lot of pain to both Michelle and CJ. But anyways, I stuck around for a little bit, and then Michelle called Tanner to see if CJ was home, because she wanted to come pick up some of her stuff. So with Michelle coming back in, CJ had left a huge mark on my neck the night before. And so even though Michelle didn't know that it was me, I didn't want that, didn't want to have an explosive episode with her coming home to see me with this huge mark on my neck. And then come to the realization that it was probably me. I wasn't ready for that, so I felt like a fugitive. I ran out of the house. So I left and I went home to my apartment, and I was texting CJ to see if he was okay. And, he asked about what happened the night before, and I told him about it. And he acknowledged that it was rape. So I guess he just kind of felt terrible all around at that point in time. And I was starting to feel terrible as well. I think that was kind of the start of when I was kind of falling into my depression, because I think I laid in bed that day just imagining the pain that Michelle was going through. and just replaying everything in my mind, I felt so ugly. And I felt ashamed that that I didn't see it up until, that moment when I felt ashamed that it took being exposed to see the ugliness and that I couldn't see it for myself way back in the beginning of it. I just felt terrible. But at some point later in the evening, I asked CJ if he would want to come over because I wanted to be, although I didn't feel like I deserved to ask for any comfort or receive any comfort, I found myself asking to be comforted because, I don't know, I guess I felt like I couldn't handle it by myself. So I asked CJ to come over so that we can kind of comfort each other. And he said, "No, it doesn't feel right. You're the one I cheated on her with." And I was hurt by that. Because yes, on one hand, like I said, I didn't feel I deserved any comfort. But I guess I needed it regardless, and it's like on the flip side of the coin, just because I came second, I guess that made me less deserving of any kind of acknowledgement. But yeah, CJ said that, he needed some space and that we shouldn't talk for a while. And this was after I was talking to him. I had borrowed some stuff from Michelle and CJ. And I wanted to give them back because I knew that Michelle was going to be moving out and I didn't want Michelle to be missing anything, and I guess I felt like I didn't want to leave her with any holes in her life as a result of, the fallout, regardless of how small they were. So I was trying to tell CJ, I have to see you at some point to give you back your stuff and Michelle's stuff. And he said, that we shouldn't talk for a while. And so I tried to respect that. The next day I didn't talk to him at all. I didn't text him or anything. The next day was kind of a blur for me, and I definitely was into my depression at that point because I ate something. I ate a bagel, the morning of their breakup when I was hanging out with Tanner. I had a bagel that morning, but other than that, I didn't eat the rest of the day that day. And then the next day, starting my first day not talking to CJ, I didn't eat at all. I had no desire to eat. And I had done that to myself once before in undergrad, where I had very strong negative emotions, and it manifested itself in a lack of desire to eat. And so I guess that was happening again this time around. And so, I went to work at my internship, and I was not doing well that day at work. I was too busy dwelling on what was going on. I wondered if Michelle was getting the support she needed from her family, and I wondered if CJ had gone to work and was doing any better that day. I just didn't know what was going on. So that day I just kind of spent it very zoned out, very distant, and later that night I was texting Tanner because I was determined to get this book back to Michelle. I honestly don't know why it was such a big deal in my mind, but it kind of was. And the conversation that we had, Tanner made it sound like he laughed at me for making such a big deal out of it. He told me Michelle's not going to kill you if she sees you. So it made me think that Michelle had kind of calmed down enough to be able to tolerate seeing me. Because at that point, CJ had already told her that it was me. CJ texted me the day before, because at first he didn't tell her it was me, and his reasoning was he didn't want to give her someone else to hate. But then I guess he changed his mind, because then he was texting me, like, I'm guessing you don't want me to tell her, and I was like, well, I told CJ that, no, I don't care to experience her wrath. But I felt like it was unfair for him to be suffering the consequences alone. It wasn't right for both of us to be in the wrong and for only one of us to be suffering the consequences. So I told him, if you think it's the right thing to do, then, do it. So he did. I guess I should have realized at that point that CJ was trying to get back with Michelle already. But I didn't realize that. And my story's all jumbled. Sorry about that, but the morning of their breakup, I felt like, as devastating as the situation was for CJ, and as hurtful as it was for Michelle, I felt like it was a breath of fresh air. It felt like an open field, and I just felt like CJ had all these possibilities in front of him to be everything he ever wanted to be, that he said he wanted to be. It wasn't going to be easy, but he had a chance to learn to be independent, and I was going to be there as his friend to help with that. That was my plan, anyways. That was the picture that came to my mind, and it was going to be me and a couple of other his friends who would probably help him, to accomplish that. And for Michelle as well. Michelle deserved someone who would have been better to her. Michelle deserves so much better. And I felt like this was her chance to find that, because the way I see it is the longer that Michelle and CJ are together, the more she risks ruining her life, basically. I mean, the longer they're together, the more bonds they'll create together, and the harder it'll be for them to break those bonds apart later, and eventually they're going to break, because CJ's not good to her. And he might have short spurts where, he puts effort into trying to be better, but they're not going to last forever. He's going to fall back, into his bad habits and his lack of responsibility and his lack of respect. CJ has issues, and it's really going to take a beating from life for him to be motivated enough to change. And I don't know if this was it, especially if CJ and Michelle end up back together. Like, if you can get away with doing stuff like that and not have consequences for it, then I don't think you're going to learn. But At least, you know, CJ. I think some people that would be enough, but I don't think it is for CJ. Anyways, I'm off track. Trying to remember where I was. So yeah, I was trying to get Michelle's book back to her, and so I was texting Tanner. You know, Tanner made it sound like it wasn't a big deal, and I knew that I, you know, would have to go by the house when CJ wasn't there because he didn't want to see me. But I thought it might be okay if Michelle was there. So that night I wrote a letter to Michelle telling her about everything, about the whole story between me and CJ and how everything kind of led up to this moment. And I put it in her book, and you know, just planned on taking the book over at some point soon to give it to her. I wanted her to have the full story because I felt that if it was something that would help her to heal faster, then I wanted her to have it. But I also told her, if you feel like it's something that will not help you, then just throw it away. Like, it was 90%, 95% for Michelle to help her in whatever way it might have helped her, and you know, 5 to 10% to make me feel better. So yeah, the next video is going to be what happened the next day, and it's a doozy, so stay tuned. Till next time.